and welcome to Connect, the monthly series where we bring in experts, innovators, and community members to explore themes of loneliness, social connections, and healthy aging across Massachusetts. I'm your host, Sandra Harris, State President of AARP Massachusetts and co-leader of the Massachusetts Task Force to End Loneliness and Build Community. We're quickly approaching the holiday season. For some, a time of joy and togetherness. It is a time when we look forward to gathering around the holiday dinner table with family and friends, and sometimes with strangers. Sharing meals with friends, family, or loved ones provide an opportunity for meaningful interactions and quality time together. A shared meal, however, is not equally accessible, especially for those who are living alone or without strong connections to others. For too many of us, being alone for meals is just a way of life. And post-pandemic, a lot of people are just not feeling comfortable rushing out and pretending we're back to normal yet. Helping us unravel all of this by sharing the health benefits of a shared meal and offering advice on some ways we can all enjoy breaking bread together is Dr. Anne Fishel. Dr. Fishel is the Executive Director and co-founder of the Family Dinner Project. She's a family therapist, a clinical psychologist, and Associate Professor of Psychology at the Harvard Medical School. She's also the Family and Couple Therapy Program Director at Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Fishel lectures and writes about the benefits of family meals. Welcome, Anne, and thank you for joining Connect.
Thank you for having me, Sandra.
Tell us about the Family Dinner Project and what compelled you to start this.
So it started in 2010, and I had a bit of an epiphany in my professional office, which is in my home. I was seeing a family, a father and a son, and it was a very tense and testy session. And just before the session, I had popped a roast chicken in the oven, expecting that I would join my family after the family therapy session. And about halfway through, the father and the adolescent son and I started to smell the lemony, garlicky, delicious chicken smell wafting through the air vents. And the son turned to me and he said, "Could we stay for dinner?" And I thought to myself, not only can you not stay for dinner, but this session, which was taking place between 6 and 7, was right through their dinner hour. And I thought to myself, this session is going so poorly, they would be much better off if I just handed them a cookbook, said to them, go home, make dinner, and then eat together. And I didn't say that, but I was also aware that there were, by that point, 20 years of scientific studies showing that when families do eat together, it's good for their bodies, their brains, and their mental health. And I was also aware that while dinner is a simple idea, it's not so easy for very busy families and all kinds of reasons. And I thought, well, the science says why, but I wanted to help families with the how. And so the Family Dinner Project I co-founded to help families have more family dinners, because only about 30 to 50% of US families are having a regular family dinner now. So the Family Dinner Project is how. It's dozens and dozens of free resources on our website to help families with quick recipes, conversation, and fun at the dinner table.
So it all started from an epiphany, right?
It did.
Okay, and why don't can you share to us the health benefits of shared meals and how does it really impact well-being?
Yes. So by now there are 25 or 30 years of dozens and dozens of scientific studies that show when families or adults or firefighters, friends eat together, it benefits their mental health and their physical health. Just to give a few examples, when you share meals, you're more likely to eat less sugar and fat and salt, to have lower rates of obesity. For teens, there's better cardiovascular health when kids eat with their families. And adults tend to eat more nutritiously if they eat with others, whether it's a friend or their children or their grandchildren. And then in terms of mental health, families who eat together have kids who have lower risk of high-risk behaviors, so lower rates of depression and anxiety and substance abuse and eating disorders, and higher rates of resilience and self-esteem. And this is true for adults too. There's been more recent research that shows that eating with others doesn't just benefit teens and children, it also benefits adults, that their mood is improved when they eat with other people, and their nutrition is also improved.
Yours is called the Family Dinner Project. Define family for us.
So I think of family in a very broad way. I think family is anybody who makes you feel at home. Family is anybody who roots you in your community. Family could be college kids eating together in a cafeteria. It could be older people breaking bread in assisted living. It could be one person having dinner with a friend. And it doesn't have to be dinner. It could be breakfast, it could be a snack. So it's any two people coming together and sharing food with one another, using it as a time to relax, maybe have a laugh, check in with each other about how they're doing, tell a story.
Are the health benefits of being with family different from being with a stranger?
Well, I think there's some differences and there's some similarities. You know, I think of the experience of being on an airplane when the food is delivered and there's a stranger sitting, you know, inches away from you, and how much nicer it can be to chat over the food that's not very good. And I can feel my anxiety going down talking to a stranger over a shared meal. I think the difference is that I'll never see that stranger again, so we don't have a relationship we can build on. We don't have little quirky patterns that we, you know, do together. We don't like always ask the same question to start our meal together. You know, and I think that's often what happens around shared mealtime. It's a ritual, and rituals help us because they're kind of an anchor, particularly when the waters are turbulent or rocky, and they have a consistency to them, and they help us feel like this is who we are with our friend or with our family. You know, this is the quirky way that we do a meal. We always start with dessert, or we always tell a joke, or we always sit in a place that's a little too small for us. And you don't get that with a stranger.
Wonderful. But is good food enough? What are the ingredients that really drive meaningful connections around a meal?
Yeah, so food is necessary. Food, I think, is what brings other people to the table. Food is a source of conversation. It is relaxing, can be relaxing. But I like to say food brings people to the table, but what keeps people at the table is the conversation and the fun. And that's why all of our resources at the Family Dinner Project include those three main ingredients. They're easy recipes, quick recipes, they're games or fun things to do to promote relaxation and laughter. And we also have resources that help with conversation. So all three, I think, are really important.
Okay, good. Now, I think I read that you also do community dinner. Tell us about the community dinners, and can you give us examples of how you help communities host community dinners? Are they different from, for example, dinner at a senior center or community center? Is it any different from that?
Yeah, so our community dinners are one of our kind of signature community programs, and we've done them in homeless shelters, clinics, military bases, about to do some in prisons. We've done them in after-school programs, museums, libraries, and we bring together anywhere from 5 to 50 families, and we cook together, or we have a potluck, or we have ingredients for families to assemble their own tacos or chili. So we do some kind of food preparation. We eat together. We play games. We have conversation jars on the table with lots of whimsical and profound conversation starters. And then we have a little workshop in the middle of the community dinner where we ask families, what are you doing well? What are your strengths when it comes to making mealtime happen? What are your struggles and obstacles? And now let's use the wisdom we have here to hear what your workarounds are to these common obstacles. And so I've been able to sort of pass along a lot of that collective wisdom. So I facilitate those community dinners, but I've moved more and more to a model of train the trainer. So I've been working with a bunch of community organizers in Northern Illinois, from the YMCA, from a hospital, from an elderly social agency, from a museum, a Montessori school, and I train them in how to bring community dinners to their communities.
Okay. Have you done any in Massachusetts? And how do we bring these ideas and these resources to our community? How do we work with more of our organizations in Massachusetts to be able to offer these kinds of community dinners?
Yes. So I'm working with several community activists and organizers on Martha's Vineyard, disability service leader, somebody from early childhood education, so we're doing a train the trainer there. We've worked with a wraparound social agency, Wellspring, in southern Massachusetts, bringing not only a community dinner, but also Dinner in a Box, which is another program we do where we partner, or they're partnering with, they have their own food pantry, and they deliver boxes of food with some of our resources in those boxes to people who are at home and can't get to a food pantry. And the resources might be conversation starters or games or ways to connect with other people.
Do you see this as a model, perhaps, for creating more of a special holiday meal? Is something that can be easily modeled or adapted to from your community dinners?
Yes, we have a whole landing page for Thanksgiving, including resources for families who can't connect in person with their family members or friends. So we have a pandemic virtual guide that sadly is still quite operative for a lot of families, and so this would be a way to cook remotely, and there's some ideas, some fun ideas about how to do that, some games that you can play over FaceTime or Zoom, so there are things like that. We're adding a whole host of recipes and ideas about indigenous people's observance of Thanksgiving, and kind of re-envisioning what Thanksgiving is really about, sort of uncoupling it from some of the really problematic historical stories of Thanksgiving, and focusing on giving thanks and connecting with others. So.
You've talked about sharing meals over Zoom and FaceTime.
Yes.
And of course, during the pandemic, many of us didn't have too many other choices. But is there any research, or do you know any way in which sharing meal virtually diminished the health benefits compared to eating in person?
I don't know of any research that shows that virtual meals are less than in-person meals. I did a survey in May 2021, so sort of midway through the pandemic, and found that 50% of families were having more dinners than they had pre-pandemic, and 50% were using Zoom and virtual meals more than they had before the pandemic. And that most of those families who had increased their mealtime and increased their remote practices were planning to continue even after the pandemic waned. And I think there's some benefits too to virtual meals. I mean, I think of how I've been able to include my sister and her family who live in California in my Thanksgiving, which I've never been able to do in the 45 years she's been out there. And, so, there are ways, I think, to expand the Thanksgiving table, use and expand any kind of dinner because of Zoom. And I think that's a real plus.
Yeah. Talking about the pandemic, many of us are still living in this habitual loneliness.
Yes.
And what would you say to a person who is still anxious or, somehow hesitant in returning to post-COVID rhythms, and especially around the meal sharing, hosting, and inviting people outside of their pod?
For starters, I think there's a little bit of a generational tension around this. I know my 30-something kids were out in the world and hosting dinner parties many, many months before I was. And then I sort of summoned up my courage to have a little dinner party. And oh, was I rusty. My hosting and cooking for more than my dog and my husband, that muscle had really shriveled. And I was exhausted, and my salmon came out before the soup, and I forgot to cook the meringues, so I had to cook them in a fishy oven. And I was trying to remember, do we play music when we have people over? What do we talk about? Because nobody's really done anything or been anywhere. Is it just going to be very, very dull and hard to connect? And my husband had a nightmare the night before the dinner party. He dreamt that his relatives, dead and alive, had all brought dozens and dozens of people to our house for this dinner party. And everybody was so mad at us because it was crowded and it was disorganized and there wasn't enough food. And I then spoke to a colleague of mine, Dr. Deirdre Barrett, who wrote a book called Pandemic Dreams. And I told her about my husband's dream, and she said, that's a very common anxiety dream about re-entering the world. And a lot of people are having that dream now. They had dreams about natural disasters and wild animals at the beginning of the pandemic. And then there were dreams about being isolated and being alone in a spaceship. And then there were dreams about your mask falling off and infecting somebody. But I think the dreams we're having now, particularly for older people making maybe steps towards other people and then retreating, are these anxiety dreams about.
So what advice do you offer them?
Well,
you persisted, right?
Well, I've been one of those people who've gone, hosted and then retreated. And I think, having some compassion for oneself, that you have to do this in a way that is comfortable for you, and not to feel pressured by other people who are maybe moving at a faster pace. And, continuing to use Zoom and to the phone. I think it can work too to put your phone on speaker mode and cook with somebody on the phone and then sit down and eat together, or use Zoom or FaceTime to plan a lunch or a breakfast with somebody you haven't seen for a while. A woman I know is part of a social group, and during the pandemic, and still, they meet in a parking lot, and they bring food and they open their doors of their cars, and they call out to each other. But they keep it a safe distance still, because they're still worried about getting COVID, as I think many of us are.
Sure. So, what advice do you offer someone watching today who lives alone and, who does not have anyone with whom to share a meal? What can they do?
Well, I think, some of these remote ideas can be really helpful. The making a call, watching a TV program, or watching a movie while you both are eating together remotely. I think looking at our pandemic resources and maybe printing out some conversation starters and sending them to a family member, and planning a meal where you pull out these conversation starters, which can be whimsical, like is there a, if you were a weather reporter giving a report on your feelings for the past day, how would you describe them in terms of weather? Or what's a character in a book or a movie that you wish you knew? Or what's your earliest memory? Or what are the ways you think you've changed over the years, and what are the ways you think you're the same as you were as a 5-year-old? So you might print out those conversation starters and send them to some friends or to a family member, and plan to pluck them out and do that remotely over the phone or over FaceTime. I think if you're already part of a social group, a knitting or a book club or a swimming group, that might be a time that you bring a snack before or after it, and share an intentional time to connect.
For community organizers who are listening to us today and are interested in the community project, how do they learn more about how to do that? What are the resources needed? And how do we make this happen to make sure that people, especially older adults living alone, or even young people who are alone, we can provide special opportunities for meetings, special dinners for them around the holidays? How does one get that started?
Yeah, I think there's several entry points. One would be to download our free community dinner guide. So a community organizer could just find those resources on our website, thefamilydinnerproject.org. They could contact me and we could have a chat about it, or I could train them and some of the other community organizers in how to do a community dinner. I could imagine a community dinner where people who are living alone could be invited to a free dinner at a community center, and it would follow the format that I was mentioning. There could be some cooking together or some assembling of food, or there could be salad fixings, and everybody could take what they want and make a picture on their plate of a face or a house with their, the salad fixings. Pictures could be taken in sort of a playful way. And there could be games taught, games like tell a rose, thorn, and bud about your week. A rose is something interesting or fun, and a thorn is something difficult, and a bud is something you hope will happen next week or tomorrow. And then there might be a little workshop where the people who came to the dinner would be asked, what do you do to feel less lonely? How do you connect? What's been helpful to you to stave off loneliness? And then they might be asked, what are the obstacles? What gets in the way? And then finally, there's a lot of wisdom here. There's a lot of lived experience. Let's hear from everybody some of your hacks, some of your workarounds to these common obstacles of transportation, or feeling like you're going to be a burden if you tell somebody that you're really feeling lonely. How do you handle that? And let's share that and come away with some new ideas.
And these are such wonderful words of advice. So thank you so much for that. And before leaving, what is the one thing you would like to leave with our audience today?
Sharing food with another person or with a group of people is probably the most reliable way we have to connect. And we really need connection, maybe more than we ever had. I want to say that bonding over food is very, very flexible. It doesn't have to be home cooked. It could be takeout. It doesn't have to be a dinner. It could be breakfast or a snack. It doesn't have to be with somebody you're related to. It could be people that you work with or a neighbor. So it doesn't have to be perfect in order to be beneficial.
Oh, okay.
And I also want to encourage people to come look at the resources at the website, thefamilydinnerproject.org, sign up for our free newsletter, and feel free to contact me, particularly community organizers, if I could be helpful.
Okay, can you please repeat your website again?
It is thefamilydinnerproject.org.
Thank you, Anne, for being with us and for all the wonderful work that you're doing and your leadership of the Family Dinner Project. We wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
And thanks to you, our audience. We hope you've heard something today that inspires you to begin sharing meals with others. If you are planning a holiday gathering this year, consider inviting others to your table. Consider sharing your table with someone who is alone and has no one to sit down with. If you are alone, know that you are not the only person feeling lonely, and you may be surprised how eager others are to connect. If you give them a chance, ask someone to join you over a simple meal, or consider sharing a meal with others at your community center or place of worship, where you can enjoy a meal seasoned with the care and compassion of your community, and where your spirit can be heightened by the presence of others. We look forward to seeing you next month for another episode of Connect. Until then, let's commit to intentionally maintaining purpose, meaning, and connections in our lives. And let's find time to share a meal with someone, especially if they live alone. It's the little things that can make a big difference in someone's life. Visit us at endlonelinessma.com to watch past episodes of Connect and to learn more about the work of the Massachusetts Task Force to End Loneliness and Build Community. Thank you.